All right, thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you are looking for the middle grade Renegade session, you're in the right place. If you're looking for something else, you're still in the right place by happy accident. We have 4 exciting and excited middle grade authors here ready to share their knowledge and expertise, so we're going to need someone of equal energy and enthusiasm to rein them in and to keep the conversation on the rails. And for that, we are deputizing our student facilitator, our middle grade Renegade Wrangler. This is Ellie Rice.
Ellie!
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, and thank you to all of our audience members for attending Author Fest this session. And thank you to our very special middle grade Renegade authors. Please take a moment to introduce yourselves and the books that you've written.
Hello, my name is James Ponte. I write the City Spice books, so the current books that I've done. I also had other series, the Frame series and the Dead City series. And my newest book comes out on Tuesday. It's City Spice 4. And in 2 Saturdays, so 2 weeks from tomorrow, Jerry Kraft, who wrote New Kid, won a Newbery, big deal, and I, little deal, are going to be doing an event together. It's at the Lake Highland Prep Library, just because that was the space we were able to find. But it's not, it's open to the public, so, but it can only hold so many people. So if you're at all interested in that, make sure you go to the Writer's Block website and register. It's all free, but I hope to see some of you there, and thank you so much for having it. These are amazing people. These are some of my best friends here, so I'm glad they're here in my hometown.
Hi, I am Julie Buxbaum, and I am a friend of James. I've written for adults, and I've written for young adults, so 12 and up. I have 5 books for young adults, and I can't remember all the titles, but the one that is most known is called Tell Me 3 Things. Do you think I can do it? Tell Me 3 Things, What to Say Next, Hope and Other Punchlines, Admission, and most recently, You're on Fire. And then I have a new book series called the Area 51 Files, and that's for 8 to 12-year-olds. It's middle grade. And I'm super excited about it because it's highly illustrated and super silly and super fun.
So I'm not really supposed to ask questions, but I think I might just do that.
James can't control himself.
Is You're on Fire like in an Alicia Keys on fire thing, or is it in like a Central Florida like, dude, you're on fire? Like, what's the...
It is both.
Okay, it's both.
It is both a metaphor and literal.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll stop interrupting.
No, he won't. He won't. We are all, it's almost like a certain type of meeting. It's I am a friend of James, and that explains a lot. Yes, I am Christina Diaz-Gonzalez. I am a friend of James Ponte. I am also an author. Several different types of books. I have some that are historical fiction, such as The Red Umbrella, which I think is the 7th grade best standards list, so some of you 7th graders may have to read it in school. Also, Thunderous Whisper.
Get to read it in
Get
school.
to read it. Get to read it, have to read it. Sometimes it's a toss-up.
See, if it had been me, I would have come up with the blue umbrella, and I would have just kept running the series
Well, let's
out.
see, I did in a certain way, because I wrote The Red Umbrella, and then many years later, that was my first book, my most recent book after 8 books, is The Bluest Sky, and they are somewhat connected. I've also written what's considered a modern mystery. It's on the Sunshine State list, Concealed.
Won the Edgar Award for Best Mystery Book in the world.
It did win the Edgar Award, but I won the Edgar Award after James won the Edgar Award for his amazing book. Also wrote a graphic novel, which is Invisible, and I'm very excited about that. Invisible is a takeoff of The Breakfast Club, so 5 very different kids are grouped together because the world pretty much sees them as the same, just 5 Spanish-speaking kids, not realizing that they have different levels of Spanish and English fluency, ranging from one who is of Puerto Rican descent and doesn't really speak much Spanish, only speaks English, to 3 kids coming from different countries who don't speak any English and are in school starting to adjust to life in the US. And all 5 are grouped together and find out that they may have something, that they have more in common than they think, especially the fact that they each have a secret that they wish weren't revealed, that they put at risk to help someone else. And with that, that's a quick summary of all my books. I pass it on to my very good friend, Allison. Did you hear that, James? My very
I'm a
good
fan.
friend.
I'm friends with Allison, too.
I actually, in
I'd
the
just
way,
like to put that out
I'm
there.
the way they met, and they're better friends with each other, and it really
Not
hurts.
true.
Not
It
true,
hurts.
not true.
Not
we all
true.
love James. We all love James.
No.
See, this is Ellie. You're going to have a hard time wrangling these renegades.
Yes.
I'm Allison Gerber. I am a friend of James Ponte, and I'm also an author. I have 3 books that are out now. The first one is called Braced. It is about a superstar soccer player who gets a back brace for scoliosis. I wore a back brace for 2.5 years, and it sort of defined everything about the way that I see the world, because I saw it through the lens of wearing a back brace all day long, every day, being uncomfortable. My second book that came out is called Focused. It's about a girl who has ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, who is also an incredible, very talented chess player, one of the best on the team, but just has to keep her grades up in order to stay on the team. My third book is Taking Up Space, and it's about a girl who's struggling to feel good about herself, but is also a very talented basketball player, although that seems to be changing as she gets older. You know, she's getting older and not as good at sports, and so she has to find another way to define herself. All 3 of the books are based on my experience. I also have ADHD, and I also struggled with self-esteem. But I am really excited because I have a new mystery series coming out called The Liars Society. And it's about a New England prep school and a high-stakes game and a private island and 5 unlikely kids who have to solve a mystery.
There we go.
Okay.
And those kids speak Spanish, but different levels of Spanish.
No,
And
they
they're
don't.
also
They
friends with
do
James
not.
Ponte.
And 3 of them are alien. So really, we all wrote one book. We just gave it
Tell
different
fart
titles.
jokes.
All right. Now we're ready. You're doing great.
And they're
I
all like
apologize.
kind of wanting to be
Spies.
city spies.
She's trying to do her thing.
No, I have to do it to James.
Sorry.
To you, but I meant
Don't.
James.
It's his fault. It's his fault. I looked the wrong way.
I am going to ask you guys some questions, and they're each specified for each person.
Okay.
Mr. Ponte, what exactly is a middle grade renegade?
So we're part of this little group called the Renegades of Middle Grade. So a renegade is someone who breaks the rules and who goes against the norms. And I came up with that name because I'm the most rule-following, stay-within-the-norms person you could ever meet. So the whole idea was the joke. It's like we're the least renegade, but there is a part of me that believes that actually writing a middle grade book or reading a middle grade book is a bit of a renegade behavior, because what you're doing is you're throwing in the chance for, you know, on our side, the really sweet thing about what we get to do is I get to write about something really personal to me. Even if it's spies and they're doing all this big stuff, it's still really personal. And some 12-year-old who I'm never going to meet is going to be sitting somewhere in their room, hopefully staying up past their bedtime a little bit because they want to see how it turns out. And that feels very renegade to me, because I'm never going to meet them, they're never going to meet me, but that person is my friend because I've shared my secrets.
Let's see, Miss Gerber, what is special about writing for a middle grade audience?
I'm sorry, I do want to interrupt one
Yeah.
thing. You can call us by our first names.
Yes.
You've read our books. We are your friends. You can call us in this environment by our first name, as polite as you are. So call her Allie. She loves it.
I do. Call me Allie.
Okay, Allie, what is special about writing for a middle grade audience?
That is a great question. I think for me, it was the first time that I really got to pick my own books that really changed the way that I saw things, and impacted the way I saw the world. So when I get to write books that might change the way that kids see things and talk about things and help define who they're going to be, I think it's a really important job. It's a really special opportunity where I get to tell a story, and middle grade readers are really picking what they like and what they're interested in and what they want to, the kind of stories they want to be part of. And not always learn from, but sometimes learn from, and also have fun and just enjoy the world. And it's fun to write for. I like writing for kids.
Let's see. Miss Christina,
Yes.
how does an adult author find a voice that speaks to a middle grade audience?
So I think when you're writing for a middle grade audience, one thing that I think most of us will agree is we almost like tap into what we felt like when we were in middle school. Even if it was long, long ago, the feelings are still the same. And it goes to why we want to write for a middle grade audience. And for me, it's very similar to what Allie said. It's like, it's such an important part of your life that it's that first time you get certain level of freedom and you get to choose. And that stays with you even as an adult, because at least for me, when I'm writing, I'm remembering that time when I first got the choice of choosing. And you have so many choices, and you can still choose anything and be anything you want. And so when you're writing, when I'm the writer, I'm also the first reader. And I still, to this day, love reading middle grade fiction. So because I love middle grade fiction, and I'm also the first reader, I want to read a book that doesn't yet exist, and it's up to me to write it. So I think that's what I'm looking for and how I do it as an adult, still writing for that middle grade audience.
Miss Julie, what is the most challenging thing about writing for a middle grade audience?
Oh, what a good question. What is the most challenging thing about writing for a middle grade audience? I think I actually don't find it challenging in the way it's pure joy for me, actually, writing for a middle grade audience. I've written for adults and I've written for young adults, and I find middle grade to be the best escape. I wrote the Area 51 files during the height of the pandemic, when my kids were home from school and didn't go to school for an entire year. And during that time, my 10-year-old son, who was 8 at the time, used to ask me all sorts of questions that I did not have answers to. Like he'd say, "Mommy, when are we going back to school?" And I would say, "I don't know." And he'd say, "Mommy, when are we going to see Grandpa?" And I'd have to say, "I don't know." And it would literally hurt every time he asked me a question. And one day we were at the dinner table and he looked at me and goes, "Mommy, I have a question." And of course my stomach dropped, and he said, "What do you think happens at Area 51? And a light bulb went up over my head, and I was like, I'm going to answer this question. You finally have a question for me that I can answer it. I'm going to answer it by writing a whole book. But really, it was a super selfish thing for me to do. It sounds like really cool that I'm this great mom who wrote her kid a book. But the truth of the matter is, that's not at all what it was.
It sounds like your kid asked you a question, you said, "Here's a 300-page answer."
And I'll get back to you in like 4 months.
I want it summarized tomorrow, and then I'll give you the next book.
But I dedicated the book to him, so he has the book dedicated to him. But really, it was a super selfish thing to do, because during those really awful time, I got to escape into this silly world where a young girl is sent to live with her uncle who she's never met, and it turns out he's head of the FBAI, which is the Federal Bureau of Alien Investigations, and there are a ton of silly aliens, and some of them fart, and I get to make fart jokes, and that is just like a pure joy for me. And so to answer your question, I don't think there's I mean, it's challenging in the sense that all writing is challenging, but it's been so much fun for me.
You know,
It's like a vacation.
I think it's important for people to realize we all struggled during COVID. Julie took it to another level. I remember Zooming once with Julie, and you know,
It's wrapped in bubble wrap.
you get used to your friends' houses, and like there's like 4 of us, and we're like, "Where are you, Julie?" And she goes, "I'm in the closet." And I'm like, what? And she goes, I mean, like, her door was shut, her closet was shut. She's like, I just need alone time. And I'm like, do the kids know you're home? Do they? She goes, shh, just keep talking. So, yeah.
It's true, I did hide in my closet
There is
sometimes.
No exaggeration of that.
No, it was a really tough time. I had 2 kids home from school who did not go to school for over a year. I live in Los Angeles. It's
We
very
all know.
different there.
We all know. We all were here. Yeah, okay. Back to you. These are great questions, by the way.
I have a follow-up question that anybody can answer. What is the most rewarding when you're writing a book?
I think my answer is somewhat similar to what James had to say. There's something really magical imagining that there are kids out there who before bedtime are hiding under their covers with a flashlight reading my book and laughing to themselves because of some joke I wrote 2 years ago during one of me hiding in the closet. And so I think that might be the most amazing part.
Yeah, and the idea that, like, when I'm writing a book and I have this idea for this story, for me, I see it almost like a movie in my head. And I am describing this movie that is playing in my imagination onto the page. And then it's out into the world, and someone else is reading it, and now it's becoming part of their imagination without either one of us talking to each other. And then if we get to meet, like something like this, and we can discuss what now lives in both imaginations, I think that just is like the cherry on top. Like, it's so rewarding.
I wasn't much of a reader when I was a kid. I didn't really know. I couldn't find the book that really spoke to me. It was really hard for me to read because I couldn't pay attention that well. And it was just always a struggle. It was always something I had to do. It felt like something that teachers made me do, and books didn't feel like they were for me. And so when I finally found some books that were like my story, or like something that really like just made me feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, there are other people who also don't like to read, and there are other people who are feeling lonely, and there are other people who are feeling like they're not good enough. When I found those like fictional friends in books, I think it sort of changed the way I saw myself, and to think that maybe there's somebody out there who doesn't think that they're a reader, who might pick up my book or listen to the audiobook or read the large print and the copy in the library, to think that there's somebody out there that I might be, a story that I wrote might be the thing that makes them say, like, I could be a reader. Yeah, I could do that. Maybe there's like more than one book, and this is like the entryway book for them. For me, that's always the thing that I'm thinking about. I'm always writing for the person who maybe doesn't feel like they're a reader, and that books don't feel like they're made for them. But books are really for everybody. Books are it's just a story. And if you haven't found your story yet, that's okay. Just keep looking.
I have some questions that anybody can answer. Which of your characters is most likely you as a middle schooler, and why?
Well, I know which character is most like me because it's in James Ponte's book.
For those who don't know, Brooklyn in my book, her code name is Christina Diaz, because Christina Diaz is my dear friend, who I give a hard time to, but who I love in so many ways, and who helps me, and I send them, like Allison, Julie's not been sucked into this world yet, but maybe she will, where I send things when I think they're awful and no good. Please, will you read this and tell me if there's anything worth keeping?
They're always
So,
good.
yes. And, you know, I don't know about everyone, but this will sound weird. All the characters are me, because the only thing that I can write are me, and they're not the physical and not necessarily the background, or certainly I can't do brave spy things like the kids do. But they all have problems, and they're all the problems I remember having. There's this great story that you hear a lot sometimes about someone's fallen in a hole, and their friend comes by, and the guy goes, "Can you help me out?" And instead of reaching down and pulling him up, the friend jumps in the hole. And he goes, "Now we're both in the hole." And then the guy says, "Yeah, but I've been here before. I know the way out." And that's what I think we're due. It's like middle school was a hole for me, man, it was a hole with steep sides. And there were times I thought, I'm never getting out of here and I was a pretty happy kid. And I still was miserable, right? Kids, and I think 95% of middle grade writing is, I'm going to tell you the problem that I had. I'm going to talk about the problem that I had because I know it's the problem that you have. And so all of them, so in the City Spies, my greatest fear in life is disappointing people that I love. That's Paris. My actuality is that I want to be friends with people. I have great friends, but I don't feel like I'm ever going to be good at it, and especially when I was 13. I would eat lunch alone a lot. I would do, because it's like, I don't know how to, so that's Kat. I feel like I want to fight for righteous causes, and no one else believes them in but me, and that's Sydney. And so you put your problems like little engines inside them, and then you let them do the things you weren't brave enough to do, or that you didn't know to do the first time through.
I agree. There's a little bit of the author in every character. Even the characters that seem to have nothing in common with you, there's a piece of us. We're using our experiences, our memories, our feelings, and incorporating them into those characters to make those characters real, because those were real experiences for us.
That's true even for the bad guys.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
bad guys that are just cardboard bad guys are not interesting to read. Like, there's a part of me that has to figure out how are they justifying this? We had this rule. I majored in screenwriting in college, and we had a rule in our program, and the rule was the answer can't be because they're crazy, right? It can't be, well, why do they do that? Oh, they're crazy. It's like, first of all, that's wrong. It's offensive. It's so many things that aren't true. But that's not it. Even people who do things we really hate, do them for reasons. And you have to be able to put yourself, and you feel kind of bad sometimes because it's like, wait, did I just justify, this, like, stealing this from one culture and taking it to another culture? Because
Yeah, no, and sometimes what I always try to think of is some of my bad guys think they're the good guys.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They think they're doing the right thing, even though we know it's bad. In their minds, there's a reason for it. They're doing it for a reason. They're not just doing it to be bad. And I think that is also makes all the characters more nuanced.
I think the really hard part about growing up and like just being a kid, like until you're 18, maybe older, maybe until you're like
56?
Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe the whole way
round
through.
number. Just yanking
picking that number out of the air.
Is like that first time you fall in front of everybody in your class. That first time somebody says something horrible to you that like really hurts because of something else that happened, because it's something you already believe about yourself. The first time your parent doesn't trust you. The first time they don't let you do something you really want to do. The first time somebody betrays you and hurts you and stabs you in the back. And the first time is like, it hurts so much. And it like every time after that, you're just going back to that first time of it hurting, but it gets easier because you have the experience to know like you're gonna be able to get through it because you've already gotten through it before. But it's like being in that hole. The first time it happens, you just like don't ever know how you're gonna get out of the hole. And I feel like for me, all of, not just all the characters, all of even the grown-ups are people who like can sort of go back to that first time something really got them. Like the first time you cried in class, the first time, and maybe somebody's never done that, the first time you couldn't cry when you needed to. Like all of those feelings sort of bubbling to the surface and you not knowing what to do with them. I feel like all of my characters have a little bit of that, whether it's something that they can't do or something they can do or something like I'm always sort of digging for that in each of them. And that's something that I'm interested in and that I'm always because I had a challenging relationship with my parents because my mom and I both wore back braces and both had a similar experience and responded very differently. And she couldn't understand why I was responding the way that I was responding, and I couldn't understand why she wasn't giving me what I needed, and to not be understood by the person who's supposed to understand you, right? So I'm always going back to that feeling of being like needing something and not from the most important person and not being able to get it. And I feel like a lot of us feel that way in all different kinds of ways. It could look very different. It could be because you want to be a basketball superstar and your parents are like, what is basketball? It could be for all different kinds of reasons. But all my characters go back to that feeling of feeling a little bit misunderstood.
And what's going to be interesting, because her daughter's young still, that feeling on the other side is worse.
Oh my God.
That feeling when it's like, when you want to understand and you don't, and you know they're like, why don't you understand me? But that's then when you can write adults who are complex in stories too. You know, you mentioned the first time I worked on this show on the History Channel, and the host his thing was remodeling houses. He was a really high-priced guy that would remodel all these houses in San Francisco. And he told me one day, he said, this is the first thing I do when I go into a really expensive house that costs millions and millions of dollars. I'll go in the room and we have the equipment, and I'll say, are we doing anything to this wall? And they say no, and he takes a sledgehammer and he drives the sledgehammer to the wall, and they scream, and they say, no, not that wall. He says, I know, and now I'm going to fix it, and you won't be able to tell anything happened, and then you'll stop worrying about everything. Because now is the first time of something being wrong. And he would fix it, and they couldn't tell, and the rest of the time would be easy. Otherwise, it's, and that's, yeah. Back to you. You're doing great.
I have a quick follow-up question to you guys talking about heroes and villains. Which is more fun to write?
The villain.
The hero. I'm going to take you down, Allie.
I think I'm going to step back and let these two.
You know what's so funny about this panel? I'm sitting here and I'm like near tears because of all these stories that you are telling.
It's her. She's asking the kind of questions that make us cry.
Yeah,
It's like therapy.
What
It's
kind
a
of
therapy
festival is
session.
this?
Seriously.
What a great interviewer.
This is supposed to be this positive, reaffirming, and we're here. We're a
turn it
mess.
Middle grade.
So the character I most relate to in my book are these aliens called the audio tutors, and they fart the smell of roses just like me.
Anyhow, I relate to the heroes. I enjoy writing the heroes the most, especially because they don't start, at least for me, none of my heroes start out like heroes. And that is the fun part.
That's the
is
best part.
turning someone who feels so utterly ordinary and often so alone in the world. Like my main character, Sky, in the Area 51 files, starts out a real loner. She is the girl in the corner reading a book by herself, and I was the girl in the corner reading a book by myself through most of my childhood. I was super shy. If you told 12-year-old me that I would be on a stage like this, talking to you totally comfortably without fear, I would not have believed you. Like, I really wouldn't have. And so it's so fun to write a character who somewhat resembles young me, who also is messy like me. She has something called UFOs, which are unidentified food objects, on her shirt at all times. And I always have a UFO on my shirt. Like right now, I spilled coffee on myself this morning.
I see some shrimp.
Yeah, there's some shrimp.
There's some shrimp
It
from
probably
lunch.
smells a little bit like shrimp from
Shrimpy,
lunch.
Yeah. We went to Boston's Fish House for lunch.
But I still
good.
get to be a hero, right? And I love the idea that Sky still gets to be a hero. She gets to solve mysteries and do really, really cool things. And she starts out feeling like she will never, ever get to do big things. And she does. And so that's why the heroes are better, Allie, and you're wrong.
So I think that my answer is actually the same, which is interesting. I feel like I was always the bad kid. Like, I'm the oldest child. My siblings were always perfect and obedient. And I was the kid who I didn't get what not that I didn't get what I wanted. Something was, I saw unfairness in the world, and I wouldn't stop talking about it. And remember, I had undiagnosed ADHD for most of my childhood, so it was like a hyper focus. And if I saw somebody else, I would be yelling about it. If I saw somebody hurting somebody else, I would be talking about it. And what's interesting is it always sort of turned into like, oh, Allison's complaining again, Allison's talking again, and I became the villain in my house. Not just in my house, but in other parts of my life.
Pretty much everywhere you go.
I heard
Everywhere
about
I
you,
go.
too. Yeah.
In our little friend group, I think you are the villain.
There's the reason we invite you.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really interesting to writing books where both ordinary kids get to become the hero and villains get to become redeemable and get to redeemable not just to themselves but to the people around them, that they get to also become heroes. So I'm really interested in sort of both kinds of characters.
I think
Yeah.
it's funny because as you're both talking, I'm thinking about it, and as much as I enjoy, and I think I am more focused on the hero or the character that grows into being the hero, because my characters are never heroes at the beginning. They are either forced into that role or they grow into that role. But what I love is the obstacles my villains throw into their path. It's not that I love the villain or it resonates more with me, but I love using the villain to make my hero grow. So I think it's almost like a combination of the two.
How many people here have seen the original by the original, I guess, the fourth Star Wars, the Luke, right, okay. I was 11 years old when that came out. So that's a seminal kind of like important movie for me. When Luke, who at 11 we thought we were supposed to identify with, is flying down, he's getting shot at, and he's all alone, and now Darth is behind. You can't now, with your 2023 brains, know what it was like in 1977 when all of a sudden the Millennium Falcon, I mean, I'm actually upset. Like, when Han rescued him in that moment, I've tried to recreate that moment every day the rest of my life, right? The unexpected hero is the greatest thing to get to write.
Absolutely.
Because the surge through your body, because it's through theirs. Han didn't know he was a hero.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, no. So when we play, it's like, I don't want to be Luke. I want to be Han.
Han was-
I want to be the guy at the end who figures it out. Right?
Absolutely.
So I know some of you are excited about City Spice 4, which comes out on Tuesday. I hope you're excited. I finished City Spice 5 2 days ago.
It's so good.
So I'm going to talk to you about City Spice 5 for a second. Rio wants to be the hero more than anything. Rio wants to be the spotlight. If anyone's read the book, you know. And in the start of this book, he does something that makes him the spotlight, and he hates it. And he doesn't feel like he's earned it. And there's this whole thing throughout, and they're given a hard time. It's like, how can it be that you, who always has craved attention, doesn't want attention? And, I don't work my books out in advance like smart people do. So I think it was Monday night at like 2 a.m. I'm writing the scene that's the theme. And Rio unexpectedly does, and I cried. I'm like at my typewriter, and I cried because I was so happy that he found it, And that sounds really ridiculous, but you get so invested. And it was late, and I hadn't slept in a long time, but you do. And that moment, because we're all heroes, and we never believe it.
One question.
You write on a typewriter?
Typewriter?
I didn't notice that detail. I didn't notice.
I can all of a sudden,
say-
is
I-
it
I
like
thought it said
Murder, She
typing.
Wrote? When, like,
I don't. I have these kids with typewriters, and I just yell at them and make them type.
Stop.
wait,
I know
you're
it was a very
crying, you're
emotional
doing
thing,
everything, and I'm
but
like,
a typewriter?
Computer. I was so swept up in it. I went back to 1970. In 1977, I had a typewriter, and my mom had a rule. My mom had a rule, which was none of us were allowed to make it to 9th grade unless we could type flawlessly without making a mistake 40 words a minute. because she didn't want to type our papers in high school. And we had to learn on a manual typewriter. So in 1977, I was on a typewriter, and that's probably right back in my head. All right, sorry.
And for our last question, if you could collaborate with any other author, middle grade or otherwise, who would it be and why?
If we could go where?
Collaborate.
Collaborate.
Well, it wouldn't be James Ponti.
No. You know,
Because he would make me cry every day. And my heart can't handle it, James.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to collaborate with any of my friends because it's like, you know, Christina the other day told the story where, like, she travels with friends. And my wife said, we're horrible people because if we traveled with anyone, we would hate them by the second day, right? I would not want the writing process to interfere
I
with the
agree.
great support and friendship that we have. So it would be someone like, man, wouldn't it be great to write with Carl Hyacin, or wouldn't it be great to write with Kate DiCamillo? I would just like to write with Kate DiCamillo so, you know, people would buy the book because Kate DiCamillo, I don't have to be
'Cause her
honest.
name is
And
on
it
the
might win an
cover.
award or something, who knows? No. Do you guys have anyone that you've thought of?
I think I would want to collaborate with Max. So we're all friends with Max Brallier.
You know what? That's a
That's
good
a-
one.
And
That's a horrible answer.
wait, I have a reason.
Because you don't want a book?
Because
You don't want to actually write a book?
we would never finish a book. There's no way.
No, it would go
But
on
You
we
would
would
order a
giggle like
lot of
idiots.
junk food.
All day.
For those of you that don't know, Max writes the series, The Last Kids on Earth.
And he's my neighbor.
Literally, like, a couple doors.
Yes, it is such a good series.
It's a great series.
And Max is brilliant, but he is also hilarious. And we turn into like 12-year-olds when we hang out
And the crazy thing
and
about
get very
Max is
silly.
he's like one of the sweetest people you ever meet.
The
And you would
kindest,
assume the
funniest,
opposite.
best person.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I wouldn't want to be with him during a zombie apocalypse.
no. You could outrun Max.
I would.
was like,
Nobody would
you know,
survive.
But you don't.
Neither of us would.
Remember, you don't have to be the fastest. You just can't be the slowest.
But I feel like Max and I would just like be pushing each other out in front of the zombie. But yeah, I would love to collaborate with Max. I think we'd have a lot of fun. But we wouldn't write a book. It wouldn't. Nothing would ever happen.
Oh,
I think you two would write a great book together.
Yeah, I do too.
I would like to be in a zombie apocalypse with Christina Diaz-Gonzalez. I feel like she would be out there, like getting the zombies. I think we would write a
with
great book
your
together.
hyper focus
Yep.
and my just going all over the place trying to make a list, it might actually work.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think that would work.
But definitely not James.
Definitely not me.
Definitely
Make
not
that clear in
James.
case you didn't understand. I do not want to write a book with James.
Okay.
We will all
I love you,
read
James,
James's
though.
book.
So do you want to be a writer?
I think writing would be fun.
What
Yeah.
what excites you about books?
Do you want to collaborate?
Wait, why? Because we want to hear her answers.
I actually do like reading a lot of spy books. I
Do
find
you?
those really fun. Yeah.
I know some you might like. All right. Well, thank you so much. You can go do your thing.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yes.
Let's hear it for her.
Yes. All right, Ellie.
Do people still raise the roof, or is that over?
For real?
It's over. Raise the roof. No.
What grade are you in?
I'm in 7th grade.
It was
So
such a good
when I was in
thing.
7th grade, there's no way I could do what you just did. No way. So I'm
I
really
don't think
impressed.
I could do it now.
Especially with a group like us
Yeah.
that are constantly interrupting.
You could type out your questions on your typewriter, though, first. I don't know why I'm going through today. I'm so sorry.
I didn't even notice. I was like so
Isn't
riveted
there
by
a
the story.
Picture book with
She's
a
trying to do the wrap up,
like a
okay?
clickety
Let this
clack
poor
or something.
7th grader do the wrap up. Everyone wants to hear the keynote. We have an amazing keynote
That's
coming
right,
up.
that's
But I
over
feel
there
so
in the corner.
guilty.
All
I
right.
love you, James.
All right,
No,
Tiffany.
none of us talk again. Stop.
Okay.
Thank you all.
One more thing, though. No.
City Spies Party.
Thank you all for coming to AuthorFest and talking with us. We are grateful that you are here today, and we appreciate your creativity. We look forward to reading more of your work in the future. Let's give our middle grade Renegade authors a round of applause.
I'm not a crier.
I know.
I'm not a crier. I don't cry. I
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. Great job. Thank you to our authors. We have about a 10-minute break. You guys can join us right back here in the auditorium for our keynote speaker. Students, if you're looking for the QR codes, there's one in each section before you take a break. We'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.